Hi, I'm Marcus Coward, and this is Wake Up New Bedford. And I am here with Liz Wiley.
Hi.
Hi.
So great to be with you.
Liz, great to
Yes.
meet you, and thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, for the people who don't know you, and for the people who may, but may not know the full context of who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, where are you from?
I grew up in Somerset, so not too far away.
Sure.
And I grew up my whole life there. Went to high school, Somerset High School. Go Raiders. And, and then I went to Bridgewater State University for my undergrad degree.
What did you study there?
Biology. I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Okay.
And so when I graduated from there, I started studying whales and dolphins.
Okay, amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I worked for probably the first 10 years of my life doing that work, where I was out on research vessels, I was up in small planes identifying where whales are, and yeah, just doing a lot of work around photo identification of large whales and how they were using the ocean and spatial, research. And then I worked for the Cape Cod Stranding Network when we formed the Cape Cod Stranding Network and to respond to strandings on the Cape, mass strandings
wow.
on the Cape. So
Okay.
I did that for a number of years.
What was the main animal that was being stranded?
Pilot whales and dolphins are the main
Sure.
animals that mass strand. And we would get occasionally like a large whale and stuff like that. It was sort of depressing work, but
Yeah,
it was
I
really
can
good work,
imagine.
really interesting
Important.
work. And so I did that for a long time. And then married my husband, started having kids, and realized I couldn't really be the mom I wanted to be with being out on boats and planes and away at sea for periods of time. And so I left that world and then started working actually at BCC here in New Bedford, at the New Bedford campus.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's when I fell in love with New Bedford.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, rewinding just a little bit,
sure.
because we're going to have a lot to talk about with your adult career life.
Yes.
But when you were younger, was
Because I'm old.
it's because you're experienced.
Because I have a lot of it.
You are a veteran in your
Yes.
field. Okay. And so, when you were younger, when you were in school, was science always your favorite subject?
No, not necessarily. I loved the environment. I loved animals. I loved nature. Science and biology classes was a means to get to be able to do what I wanted to do. I remember being really young and deciding that I wanted to work with dolphins.
Sure.
And this is going to date me, but there was a show called Flipper. And it was
Okay.
this like ball-nosed dolphin, and it was like he was friends with a kid, and in Florida in the Keys or something. And I thought, wouldn't that be so cool to be able to work with dolphins? And so I remember like thinking, I'm going to become a marine biologist. And my parents were like, everybody wants to work with Flipper, But then I actually went to, after high school, I went to BCC. I was a student at BCC and was sort of not sure what I wanted to do, still really wanted to do that. And I thought, well, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I pursue that? Somebody's got to be the person that gets to work with whales and dolphins. Why not me?
Sure.
And so after I left BCC, I transferred to Bridgewater. And that's, when I was like, okay, I'm going to have to take these horrendous biology and chemistry and physics classes and get through it to get to where I wanted to go with my career.
So, when you were in school, sure, the interest and the passion for the environment and animals were there, but did you really like, or were you really fascinated and interested in the studying of it, or were you also just an outside person?
I was an outside person.
Yeah,
I can't
okay.
even pretend like, I mean, I love learning.
Sure.
But school is stressful.
It is.
And it's hard.
Yes,
And
correct.
it's, those science classes are hard to get through. And so for me, I'm just not a natural student, I'm a doer.
Yeah, me too.
So for me, it was really a struggle to get through those classes, but I knew that I needed to go where I wanted to go with my career.
So you always saw yourself going further into education? That was never, there was never a doubt for you? You're like, maybe, it isn't worth it, or maybe I don't need it.
No, I knew that I wanted to do this environmental work. I knew that I wanted to be out in nature. I knew that I wanted to work with marine mammals. I didn't know that I wanted to be involved in education in any way, right? So I went and I did that career, and like I said, I did it for a number of years, and I really loved it. But something that kind of always gnawed at me a little bit while I was doing that work, as fulfilling as it was personally for me, I struggled with the fact that I didn't feel like I was making enough of a difference in the world or like in people's lives. And so when I had kids, and then when I was sort of like redirecting and trying to figure out where I wanted to go, from there, one of the things I started doing was I had a friend who was the dean at the New Bedford BCC campus at the time, and talked with her about, okay, where I'm going to go post children career-wise. And she said, well, come start working with us at the New Bedford campus and see what you think. And I remember very early on in that career of working at BCC, I went to her and I said, I want to get women involved in science and math.
Sure.
Right? Because I realized, having been in it, that it was still a very male-dominated field, especially in marine mammals, working with marine mammals at the time.
Interesting. Sure.
And that I looked around and I saw a lot of women that were doing it, but they were single women or women without children, and thinking, can I do both of those things? And I really didn't feel supported to, and that's why I left. And so I think that's what inspired me to want to work with women, to get women to realize they could do these fields, these math and science fields.
Sure.
But at the time, the dean, her name's Terry Romanovich, and she's been a mentor of mine for many years. She said, why don't you just write a grant to get women back in school? And so we wrote the Wise Women Grant, which was Women in Successful Environments, and that ended up being a program that we ran at the downtown New Bedford campus for many years. It ended up being a really successful program, and then I went on to run other programs at the college before I left there. But that was the transition for me from doing the marine mammal work to kind of where I am today.
So, in a general term kind of way, would you say that you were a scientist or like an environmentalist when you were doing a lot of the work in marine biology?
Yes, I think environmentalist for sure.
Okay, so in being an environmentalist, is it still hard to balance a work life and a home life, would you say?
I think that's a hard balance for anybody, and no matter what field they're in, right?
Sure.
Like, I think society puts so much pressure on us to perform at certain levels in our jobs and in our work that people struggle with that regardless of what their career track is.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think,
like for man or woman, like, were you going on a lot of like work trips in order to like keep you at work, or like what did that look like?
when I was doing the marine mammal work, yeah, absolutely. I spent a lot of time during field seasons, right, when whales or dolphins or, you know, I ended up focusing really on large whales.
Sure.
So during those seasons, you know, you're either, you know, on boats for extended periods of time, sometimes 2-3 weeks at a time, or, you know, you're having to go where the whales are, you know, so you're traveling a lot with that as well, yeah.
Did you ever struggle with being on a boat?
No, actually, during that time, I really loved being on boats.
Really?
Yes, yes. After having kids, I did struggle with being on boats because, like, all your body changes and hormonally, and yeah, I had a lot of. I still struggle with like motion sickness now, and I think, how did I do that back then? Where I'd be on boats for, I mean, literally sometimes weeks, months at a time, or be up in planes circling really tightly on, you know, over whales, you know, and. I think about it and I'm like, like makes me motion sick thinking about it, but I did that for a long time.
Yeah, I've never
I think
been
it's
on a
really,
boat.
I know, it's so interesting because like there's so many whales and sea life around here that marine mammals that people don't know about. Like, you know, we were talking earlier and growing up in New Bedford, or I grew up in Somerset. Like when I was growing up, I didn't realize how big of a region this is, you know, for it. Like right now, you know, today is April 11th, and it's right whale season in Cape Cod Bay. Like you can pretty much go to any viewpoint in, you know, on Cape Cod and look at Cape Cod Bay and see right whales swimming in the bay right now. There's probably 80 to 100 right whales in Cape Cod Bay right now, today.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And so are people in New Bedford able to see whales? Like
Yes.
is there whale
Yes.
watching available?
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
In Plymouth, there's the Uncle John's, which is a really good company for going out and seeing whales in this region. That's the one I would recommend.
Sure.
Provincetown has a good company but it's a little further drive. But yeah.
So,
Yeah.
talking about whale and dolphin mass stranding, what was
Yeah.
the main reason that they were being stranded?
Oh God. All right. So there's lots of theories. I mean, basically what happens is during full moon tides, you get really high tides and really low tides, right? So really high tides and really low tides during full moons. And so that's typically when we would see mass strandings happening. So you would get whales and, or dolphins coming into, like here's Cape Cod, shaped kind of like a hook.
Yeah.
And so when the whales come and sort of circle up into this area, dolphins come into this area, and then the tide goes out really fast, that's where we would see strandings happening.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and there's the Cape Cod Stranding Network on the Cape is still around today and thriving. It's housed underneath the International Fund for Animal Welfare on the Cape in, I think, Yarmouth Port. Yeah, they're still doing really good work.
And so that sounds like a pretty straightforward explanation, but there are other theories as for why that may happen?
Yep. Yeah, I think that, I don't know what the theories are. I mean, I've been out of the field now for quite a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so...
But it was definitely that environmental, like you were saying, scientist versus environmentalist, that when I went back to work after having kids and when I was working for BCC, one, wanting to get women into science and math and then just getting them into school, and then I went back and got my master's degree. And my master's degree was in organizational management and leadership. And my capstone project for that was really how to work with, like, seeing how women are change agents in the communities, right? And how, they're in a lot of ways the environmental leaders in their communities and in their families, right? Like in their family units, they make a lot of those decisions around, what food to buy and what products to use in the house and, the exposures, environmental exposures and things like that.
Totally.
And so looking at how women shape that was really interesting to me. And so that was some of the work that I did for my capstone project. So I started to slowly weave that, environmental component back into my work after leaving the field and finding ways to do it. And I think really, probably mostly because of my upbringing, I'm Italian and Lebanese, so food is really important.
Yes,
I really
for sure.
found that niche through food and food security and the importance of food and the importance of culturally relevant foods and healthy foods. And yeah, so that's kind of what's steered me all these years to where I am now at the Marion Institute.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so when you were talking about how you were feeling that that you were having a lack of impact, maybe, in some of the other fields, did that have to do with your impact in marine biology you felt like wasn't strong enough for you, and then you needed to focus more on the human side, the,
Kind of,
person-to-person interaction?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
sure.
think I discovered that personally I really love working with people. I really love changing systems and shifting perspectives and making things better for people, from an equity lens. And so, yeah, I think all those things started shifting where, as much as I loved studying whales, like who wouldn't want to study
of
whales,
course.
right? It's like incredible. My husband still does it.
Sure.
He's a blast, he's never going to retire. But for me, I just felt like I wasn't doing impactful enough work, and I remember those days that I worked at BCC, and I worked there from, I think, 2007 to about 2013.
Oh, wow.
In different roles and capacities. There wasn't a time that you put your head down on your pillow at night and didn't feel like you had made a difference and were doing important work. And that that really I found to be awesome.
Sure. And
Yeah.
so you were always outdoorsy person and really appreciated nature.
Yeah.
Would you say that you were also very interested in this person-to-person interaction and interested in changing systems when you're younger too, or you had to learn that perspective as you got older?
I was definitely a people person from forever,
Sure.
right? Like
Okay.
I used to get in trouble in school because I was like the social butterfly.
Really?
Always like talking with people and hanging out with people and like acquiring new friends and
Sure.
making new friends and I think I collect people.
You said collect people?
I do.
What do you mean
I
by
do.
that?
Well, I just love people, right? So I love I love hearing new stories. I like to hear their stories and backgrounds, and I find people fascinating.
Very
Don't you?
interesting. No,
this is why you
absolutely.
do this job.
Yeah,
this
it is.
is exactly why you do
and
this
everyone
job.
has a story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if
yeah.
you take the time to listen to it, it's fascinating. Yeah.
And so when you went for your master's in,
Yes.
in what was the master's again?
I got my master's in organizational management and leadership.
Yes, okay, organizational management and
Very
leadership.
broad. Yeah.
Yes, but so in that, do you feel like it came to you naturally in order to be a leader?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that you don't, like, I remember taking my master's classes and being like, isn't this common sense? Right? And I
Yeah,
never
sure.
felt that way when I was doing my undergrad in science, right?
Sure.
Like I found that work painful, like we were talking about earlier, really like I was like, I'm not a good student.
Yeah.
But when I was getting my master's degree and I really thrived, like I just found that stuff and I was older, and I was more focused and all of that, but it still was like, oh, this is coming easy to me.
Sure.
This I understand.
And do you feel like you did that at the right time, or do you wish that you had done that earlier in life?
I think it was the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the right time. I mean, I did have 2 young babies, and it was chaotic, but it was definitely the right time because, again, I had been working at BCC for a while, and actually pretty early on in my time at BCC, I went back to school and got my master's, but realized that, I wanted to, everywhere I worked, I was a program starter. Right, like an initiator of
Yeah.
programs,
Okay.
and it's funny. Like life, you don't understand your strengths or weaknesses until you've lived through it a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so everywhere I went, career-wise, I would start new programs, and even like, okay, you're gonna, even going back to high school, I would start programs and start projects and start things, and then I would be like, okay. Good, started that, like hand it off to somebody else and want to do the next thing.
Yeah, sure.
When I went to BCC and I started Wise Women, like I loved starting Wise Women, but I could never see myself like doing that forever, right? And so I thought I was a quitter. Right? Like I had this perspective where I was like, God, I can't stick with anything. Like, and it wasn't until I was doing my master's and my master's work that I realized, like, no, I'm a starter. Like
Yeah.
we need all people. We need the people that are the ones that are implementers and can stick with it and want to like keep doing the same job. And we need those other people that come in and are like, oh, I see how we can start this program or this collaboration or this partnership and create this out of it. And that's good. We all need to like follow what's our strengths.
And so, obviously, you've been honest this whole time, but with this
Yeah.
next question, I could see how you may want to be modest, but just
Okay.
be honest. So, you are an initiator and a leader. Do you feel like a lot of your motivation came from yourself, or did you find yourself working in teams a lot of the time in order to help you with these ideas, or was it really just coming from you a lot of the time?
I think the spark might come from you. I think the spark also comes from the people that you surround yourself with.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's hard to say, like, did I create the spark? Did I get the spark from somebody else? Like, how did that happen?
Sure.
And then I'm a huge collaborator.
Sure.
I think that everything is better in collaboration. We just are more strengthened when we work collaboratively together.
And we're social beings as humans. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, again, love to pull people together and network and realize like how, okay, what they bring to the table and what they bring to the table, how that can work and really make a better project or a better program.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfectly said.
Yeah.
So when you were working with college students,
Yeah.
one, did you find it natural and easy to work with college students, or did you yearn to work with any younger kids?
No, I liked working with the college level kids. Yes, yes. I found it totally entertaining and really fun.
Really?
And yeah, I love that. I love transitions. I love transformations, right? When people are going through transitions or transformations in their life, I find them really such like vibrant, robust times, but they're also really scary times for people.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what kids are doing when you're advising kids or when you're working with students at that level and they're trying to make these big decisions. And, so it's a really fun time to sort of drill down into, a person's like, what motivates you? What's interesting to you? How do you identify those things? How do you build upon those things, right? So I found that to be really interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, younger kids, it's not that I don't love younger kids, I really do, but like I remember volunteering at my kids' schools, in elementary school, and I'd be volunteering and I'd be like, my shoulders would be up at my ears and I'd be cutting out some weird, I'm like, okay, this is not for me.
Absolutely, yeah, it comes with its own set of challenges.
Arts and crafts, no.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand that, yeah. And so now that you've moved on from teaching, when does the Marion Institute come into your life?
Cool. So Marion Institute has been a part of my life for quite a while.
Okay.
So I was working at BCC when I even learned about the Marion Institute.
Okay.
And thought, wow, what a cool organization. Back in, I don't know, you were probably too young to remember this, but for many years the Marion Institute ran a conference called Connecting for Change.
Okay.
And it was a 3-day conference and it sort of overtook downtown New Bedford.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was 3 days of keynote speakers and amazing leaders in different fields, really, and it had different tracks. So there was a social justice track and a women empowerment track and a youth track and a food and justice track and a health and wellness track. So it had all these different tracks and then all these amazing speakers that would come, and it just took over the whole downtown. It was amazing. So the Marion Institute ran that from, I don't know if I'm going to get the years right of when it started, but for about 10 years or so it was running this program.
Okay.
So that's when I first learned about the Marion Institute and used to have a table set up at those for BCC at those conferences. And just it was an incredible energy promoting, brought people together from all walks of life. It was just awesome. And so really kind of fell in love with the model of the Marion Institute at that time and the work that they were doing.
What was the model?
Well, they, at that time, they were running that conference.
Sure.
They did a lot of fiscal sponsorship for other organizations that didn't have 501c3 status, so they acted as sort of the umbrella organization to support those and provide admin services to those organizations that were just starting up and,
Sure.
and getting started. And they had a couple of other different programs at the time.
Sure.
And so I learned about it, one of the, and then I think I was working at BCC, I was running the Green Center at the time, and I had started a Master Gardener program and had gone to, the Marion Institute had just bought Round the Bend Farm in South Dartmouth.
Okay.
And they were looking for a program director for that program, and the then executive director at the Marion Institute hired me to be the director for that new farm program.
Yeah.
And I had already been doing a fair bit of work in the food landscape at that point, and starting to get really into food security and looking at our regional food system at that point. So I left my job at BCC, took the job for the Marion Institute, helping to launch Round the Bend Farm. And then Disa Van Lerhoven, who was the executive director at the Marion Institute, decided to step down and come to the farm. And it was her dream to sort of manifest that, that project. So we worked collaboratively together for a couple of years while we also transitioned Round the Bend Farm out from the Marion Institute, and it became its own 501c3, so its own nonprofit organization,
Okay, cool.
which was not unusual for the Marion Institute. It did a lot of like having programs that either fledged out and became their own 501c3, or there was some fluidity within the Marion Institute in that way.
So they really helped develop things.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I left Round the Bend Farm in 2016. I continued to do food security work in the city. I was working for a company called IoT Impact Labs.
Okay.
And I was the food security lead, and our job was really working with lots of big tech companies like Dell and GE and Analog Devices, and they were just starting to get into that IoT world. IoT is the Internet of Things, and it's like thinking about smart devices and instrumenting the physical world, right? So we're getting more and more used to it, but this was back in 2016. People were like, IoT, what's that?
Yeah.
So we were working with those big companies because they were starting to get into smart sensors on farms and fishing boats and security, cybersecurity stuff. And so they had hired me. Chris Resendiz was the owner of, originator or founder of IoT Impact Labs, and he hired me knowing my background with farming and with fisheries, because I always say I was like the glorified communicator. He needed somebody who could talk to farmers and fishermen.
Interesting.
And talk to the tech people. So I was like the bridge between those two worlds.
Sure.
And that was really interesting. I did that for a couple of years, and then IoT Impact Labs got acquired by Context Labs up in Cambridge, up in Boston.
Okay.
So all of a sudden I found myself commuting to Cambridge, and did not love that.
Understandable.
Yeah, that was a long commute, and I had 2 young kids, and so I lasted probably about 9 months or so, and then I was like, I'm out. And then got a call from the Marion Institute, and they were looking for an executive director, and so that's when I went back to the Marion Institute as the executive director. Was January 1st, 2019.
Wow.
And here I am today.
And here you are
7
today.
years later.
And so,
Yes.
such perfect timing, because that really wraps up our part 1.
Okay.
And so in part 2, we can really talk about your role in as the executive director of the Marion Institute, some of the projects that you first took on, how it's developed over the last 6 years.
Okay.
Right, you said in 2019?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can talk about some plans for the future.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you everyone for watching. This has been part 1 with Liz Wiley, and catch us in part 2 where we can continue this conversation. Thanks so much.